Hi guys, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am OctoBinx and you're watching my very first speed build for YouTube. I've never done a speed build before. It is the first one. But I've loved the idea of doing speed builds for YouTube in the past, but I've never really had the confidence or the courage to do it. But I figured, I do have quite a bit of time on my hands with quarantine and lockdown and such, so why not give it a shot? And so here we are. The build that I'm speed building today, it's gonna be like an African village, African inspired village. Of course, we don't have an African pack for The Sims 4 at the time of this recording. But I was very inspired to recreate something because it's something I've wanted in the game for a very long time. When I was young, played this Sims pack called it was before The Sims. It was a 90s game called Sim Safari, and my sister and I played that when we were very young, before we even got The Sims 1. And we had a lot of fun. You could like own your own sort of safari lodge, and you had to have safari animals, different animals like the big five and such, and you would basically manage this safari park. We were not very good at it at the time when we played it, but we still had a lot of fun. And I always wished that EA would do another sort of African inspired pack in the future. But of course, we are still waiting for that to happen. But I have hope. But it didn't stop me from wanting to recreate something in The Sims 4. I've wanted to do an African inspired build for quite a long time now. But I never really knew whether we had enough in the game to sort of convincingly pull that off. But I think it turned out pretty well. This build that I'm doing now is the third sort of African inspired build I've done. The first African build I did was for the Spark Challenge that they're having at the moment on the gallery. I decided with the themes that we had, I did a rustic theme, which you can find under my gallery ID, OctoBinx, which is more like forest inspired. Like, I'd recently watched the Twilight Saga again. Don't ask me why, but it's lockdown, I'd watched the Twilight movies and I was kind of inspired by Bella and Edward's wedding in the fourth film, and I thought, it was just something I felt like doing at the time, and so I did a rustic build. But that was quite early on in the sort of challenge phase, so I decided to do another build, and I decided to give the desert theme a shot with a bit of a twist. Kind of pushing the envelope a bit, I guess, but I thought maybe this was the time to try and make an African build in the game. So I made an African sort of inspired wedding menu, which you can also find on the gallery. So I tried that and made a little village to accompany it. And then I ended up also making a storytelling movie to go with it all. So I had a lot of fun because it did work out, and I thought, let me share how I created an African village with YouTube, because it can be done. I think it can be done pretty convincingly. Of course, it would be great if we had better, African detail in the game, but I think it sort of works. At this point in the build, I built a few rondavels, at least that's what they're called to my knowledge, African inspired rondavels. So they each rondavel I sort of, for this build so that it's functional in the game, features like it'll be one is a living room, one is a dining room, they're 2 bedrooms, and they're sort of bathroom shared. At the moment, I'm using these poles from toddler stuff. Actually, it's those are the poles that they come with those hanging lights you can put in the garden, like fairy lights. And I don't know, I just, for some reason, they reminded me of traditional sort of African, um yeah, woodworking stuff. I thought it looked quite nice to sort of wrap them around the rondavels. It took a long time to do each of those poles around each of the huts, so I have cut that out, because it is incredibly repetitive. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's, for me, it was totally worth it. I think it really enhanced the look and feel of the build at the end of the day. I just wish I could find out how many I placed, because there are so many toddler poles there. But yeah, so definitely critical for this build are those toddler poles. Like, you need to have the toddler stuff pack for this build. But yeah, the other packs that were really crucial off the top of my head were Cats and Dogs, Get Together, and Jungle Adventure. Like, the stuff that I used from those packs was made up the majority of this build. I've cut here now, after the Rendavel building, I decided to build a chicken coop. I don't know why. It was just a whim. I thought it would be kind of funny. I did, in my sparked video entry for the competition, sort of recreate sort of chickens running around everywhere in the village, which was supposed to be sort of comical and quirky. But yeah, I kind of thought it would be cool. I'd love a farming pack in The Sims, as lots of people do and don't. Okay, I hear those people too, but I personally would love animals, more animals in the game. I think it would be a lot of fun. So I thought we could pretend that these chickens are real. And so yeah, I tried to sort of create some kind of chicken-like coop, I guess. And now I'm starting to, as you can see now, create the landscaping, I guess. I wanted to create my own sort of signature tree, which you may have seen earlier. Yeah, there weren't enough trees in the game. We have a lot of trees, I get it, but there weren't any trees in the debug catalog or the normal catalog that were sort of African enough for my liking for this build. So I decided to use that very old dark tree that came with the Vampires game pack, which has no leaves on it. It looks quite burned, but using that tree, and then there was like some kind of grassy ivory greenery that came with Island Living, and by raising that up and using a couple of them, I could make it look sort of like those African trees you see like typically in a safari. I thought it was more convincing than what we had, because the closest other thing is probably those jungle adventure trees. But yeah, I thought I'd try push my creativity a bit there. I think it worked. But yeah, so moving on, the grass here. I know these sort of grass types definitely came with Get Together and Cats and Dogs, and African landscapes, at least for the sort of desert vibe that I try to go for. It definitely needed to be sort of dry grass. The majority of it was dry grass. But yeah, I think it works. I said earlier, but I'm going to say it again. No CC was used in the making of this build or any of the other builds that I have on the gallery. I had a lot of people on Twitter asking me where I got sort of the outfits for the sort of African family that I also made to sort of go with my African village. And none of the stuff I used was CC. It all came with the Sims 4 Maxis game packs, expansion packs. It's all there. I personally like the challenge of playing without CC. I feel like it pushes me to sort of try and come up with more creative solutions to things. But I guess that's just me. Yeah, and I guess creating an African village is a little ambitious, and yeah, but I thought it was worth a shot. I love to see more diversity in the Sims games. So yeah, I'd still, as I said, would love to see an African pack in the future. That sort of, is more inclusive. I mean, they're always trying to include more cultures and skin tones in the game. But I am 100% behind people who want that, and I hope we get some more of that soon in the future. That would be really cool. So now I'm just doing a bit of terrain painting around the build, but that's the majority of the landscaping is done by now. I have cut out quite a bit because I typically am quite a slow builder, and this being my first speed build video, I haven't figured out the timing of recording and such, for a speed build. But hopefully you get a good idea of sort of how I've recreated this African village in the game. But yeah, so now we're moving on to the interior of the build. This is like the sort of meeting room, dining room, whatever you want to see it as. So this is sort of where the people living on this lot can come and hang out and have a drink. I have tried to make this lot off the grid friendly. As far as I know from what I've play tested, it is off the grid. It's fine. It works. But I mean, of course, if you don't want it to be off the grid, you can just change that. But I thought it would make sense to sort of make this off the grid compatible. It would make sense, I guess, for an African rural village. So yeah, I tried to do that. I tried to use I used those island living masks. I wish we had more like African masks in the game. Even they don't have to be. I know some people say that they don't want more, how do you say it, more African sort of themed clothing or interior because they wouldn't use it typically if you're like not into that kind of game style. But I mean, I personally have seen African masks, for example, used very fashionably in like hotels and stuff, and it can look really chic and just add a lot of personality to a build, I think. So I'd love to see more of that kind of thing in the game. It would work for African builds, of course, but also I think other kinds of builds or home builds or whatever, I think would be cool. So here I'm placing, I absolutely went crazy with the debug menu. So I found a lot of cool baskets from like Jungle Adventure and stuff in there. Debug is just heaven. The only problem with debug is, of course, how chaotically disorganized it is. To find things in debug is such a mission, especially if you've placed something and later on you want to place maybe the same item somewhere else. To find it is such a mission, and I'm sure many of you can relate. But yeah, it would be great if we had some kind of update to sort the debug menu out. But you know what? At the end of the day, I am just so grateful that we have the debug options available. I mean, thinking back to a time when we had to build without the debug menu. I I don't know how we did it, because wow, like there's so much stuff in there, and yeah, it's a lot of cool things, a lot of, you can get so creative with the stuff that is in the debug mode. And yeah, it definitely was one of the things that convinced me to try and recreate like an African village in the game, like for sure, hands down. So yeah, now we're onto the kitchen. I kind of tried to aim the build at being more communal, and maybe they eat traditionally around the fireplace as opposed to in the kitchen. But I mean, you can't cook everything around the fireplace, of course, in game. And I personally, I like my builds to be sort of convincing as much as possible. I do like to make sure that they are compatible with gameplay. So if you need to bake a cake for a wedding or a birthday or whatever, like, it's covered. Don't worry, there is a stove, there is a fridge, and they are off the grid friendly. So yeah, it should be fine. Yeah, so this is pretty much it for the kitchen. Yeah, I tried to use lots of like rustic rural objects here, like the milk cans, as you can see in the corner, and sort of fruit bowls everywhere, to look a little bit chaotic, but still homey in a sense. But yeah, and here I'm sort of looking for what else I can find in the debug catalog to sort of decorate, like pots and stuff. Some of the things in the game, like these clumps of dirt from Jungle Adventure, just like, you look at them and you don't really realize what they look like until you put them down. But yeah, there's some gems in there, like, for sure. But yeah, I think this is pretty much it for the kitchen. Yeah. So, whew, wow, first speed build. Voiceover. I've been so nervous about doing this voiceover, because I think I'm overthinking it, like, for sure, and it's definitely something I've been putting off doing for days. But being with lockdown and everything, and the state of the world at the moment, I found a lot of comfort by watching some tubers and the Spark program, as maybe controversial as it may seem amongst the community. I've so enjoyed the Spark program and watching YouTubers, and it just has kept me so much company during these difficult times, and especially not being able to see friends and family and such. It's really great to have the sort of Sims community come together and share creations, with one another, and it's really been great. And I figured I enjoy listening to people's sort of thought processes behind their builds and such. So I didn't want to chicken out and just play some music or something in the background. I thought, let me try and share a little bit about myself and the thought process behind the build, as scary as it is. And yeah, hopefully I don't regret it. But yeah, so we've moved on now to the living room of the build. Yeah, it's still difficult in the game to sort of recreate a living room that's sort of African inspired. I tried to do my best, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's maybe not traditional to in an African sense in real life, but for The Sims, it'll do the job, I believe. So yeah, I like to play with the builds that I create. I like to make sure they work, that they're not just aesthetically pleasing. So yeah, of course, if you're playing The Sims, you need to have a living room and a kitchen and such. So yeah, but yeah. So here I'm just placing a few lights around the place, all of them off the grid lights, so they work no problem. yeah, I of course had to add rocking chairs because we recently got the Nifty Knitting stuff pack. Um, Personally, haven't really gotten stuck into Nifty Knitting yet. I've been so busy building African builds that it's just, I haven't quite explored that yet, but I absolutely love the rocking chairs that came with Nifty Knitting. I think they are so cute, and it just gives sort of Sims, I don't know, a more realistic edge, you know, like to sit rocking, knitting, talking to family members. I think the interactions are super cute. So yeah, so far I really think Nifty Knitting is, it's a good stuff pack. I think it's personally hard to beat Tiny Living, but from what I've seen, it's pretty good. Yeah, so here we've moved on to the, okay, I guess it's like a dorm room, I guess. So it could be for 3 children, or it could be children and teenagers, or maybe even a grandparent stays here. Um, I would have loved to have fitted more beds into the rondavels, but of course, space is still kind of a problem. But I think it's fine. I mean, you could always exchange one of these if you have a toddler. You could put a toddler bed. But I thought these island living beds looked pretty okay in terms of like the textures and the on the fabrics and stuff. It looked pretty African enough for the build. Um, yeah. So yeah, here I'm adding those dolls from Juggle Adventure. Was so perfect when I found them in debug. I thought I have to put these down. I mean, I don't think that the Sims children can actually play with the dolls, but you know, they look good and look pretty convincing for the build, I guess. Um, yeah. So just decorating a bit here with some wall decorations. Ugh, the bathrooms were a bit of a mission. They are kind of boring, I get it, but I felt like it didn't make sense to make them sort of, I didn't want them to be bougie because it just wouldn't fit with the rest of the feel of the build. Um, yeah, so I tried to keep them really basic. It's just a plain bathroom, nothing hectic. It was a bit funny with the sort of layout of the bathroom to figure it out, but it does work. You know, I had a family in here and tested the build, so you don't have to worry. It definitely works. So it should be fine. Just to make sure when you place a build on a lot, to make sure move objects is on. But um, yeah, that's yeah. I'm sure most of you will do that anyway. Um, Actually, the I didn't mention this lot that I built on. It's actually the in Oasis Springs where the park is. It's that lot in Oasis Springs um, that I have used for this creation. The other African build that I made, the wedding menu lot, is also Oasis Springs. Only that one is, no, I think it is where the land grab house is up on the hill. It's either the land grab's lot or it's the lot opposite, but I'm pretty sure it's the land grab house. Yeah, so that's where that one goes. I just thought I have been fortunate to go to like Namibia, like the Namibian desert before, and you know, it's so beautiful with the desert there and the sort of views that they have, and you kind of get a sense of that from that lot where the land grabs live. If you look out, if you just bulldoze a lot and just look at the view that's created in the game, it's sort of, it works. It worked enough definitely for the wedding venue. And yeah, I thought this was also a good fit, the where the park is. Yeah, it works. It's enough. You definitely couldn't create this sort of African feel in any of the other worlds in the game. But it sort of works. It's, you kind of lose a bit of the magic, admittedly, when you sort of playing and you just see cars going past. on the street, but it's fine. We can just imagine that there are no cars or roads. We can pretend there are chickens running around. The other thing I did with the wedding menu is I took that toy giraffe from the children's category, the toy giraffe, which serves no purpose other than decorative reasons, and I sized it up to look like a real giraffe, and it looks really cute for the sort of African vibe, and I really have fallen in love with those giraffes like so much. To me, I call them jolly tall and jolly small because it's just they're so happy. But they were really cute, and I use them as well in that build to sort of try and create an African vibe. I know they're not real, they don't move, but yeah, I like to imagine that they do. Yeah, it would be really cool if we saw something like that in a future game pack. I mean, I doubt it. We don't even have sort of farm animals at that stage. I think we would more likely see farm animals before we saw safari animals, but I'm just saying it would be really cool if we could see that in the game. Like, I feel it would work so well. Like, firstly, we'd have to have cars too. It feels like a bit of a list that I'm making here, but if we had like safari game drives in the game where they would get in the car together and drive through a safari park and like be all touristy and take photos, like it would be really cool, and like see lions and hippos, and I don't know, I just think like that would be a really cool experience. Maybe they stay at a hotel lodge, but we'd need hotels for that. Guys, you know, a girl can dream. So I don't know, I think the idea of a safari pack would be really cool. I'm not getting my hopes up. I am perfectly happy to live with my sort of Sims 4 attempt at making an African village. But yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, so we're getting to the end of the build. I am just putting the finishing touches. I put some masks here, sort of like at the entrance to the village. Which is, I think, pretty common in traditional, maybe Zulu culture, to have these masks at the entrance. But I thought it looked pretty cool. But anyways, so thank you so much for watching my first speed build. If you stuck it out to the end, wow, thank you. Yeah, so let me know what you think, and we should be coming up to the screenshots of the build now. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you maybe again in future videos. Thanks guys, bye.